Hello, and welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for the week of June 16th through the 22nd. If you are watching this, then it means you are at least able to see me, hear me. You're on a device that's connected to Wi Fi. You are somewhere in the world, and I'm so grateful that you are here. And we should be very grateful that we're alive in this moment and that we're able to connect like this through the interwebs and the gift of technology. So let us put up all of our gratitude out into the universe so that Jupiter can bring. Where's my abundance, Jupiter? I think it's so funny when Jupiter ingressed into the sign of Cancer and everyone's like, this is our moment. And then the square to Saturn. I am recording this on Sunday, June 15th, as Mars and Uranus has already perfected and as Jupiter is perfecting to Saturn. So we shall see what unfolds for the rest of today, but a lot happened last week. And for me personally, as these squares were perfecting, the way I experienced it was just a lot of comments. You know, my friend Nisa, who's from the Bronx, says, mind your neck, like mind your business. If this does not apply to you, then scroll past or you don't need to watch, you know? And I always err in the side of caution. Like, I'd rather tell people what I'm seeing and what I'm delineating from the astrology and me be completely wrong or overly cautious than not. Like, I'm just trying to put out the information so that people can do with that information what they will. But I've already made like a couple of videos about all of the squares, and we've done a monthly astrology forecast with Stephanie, and I've done weekly astrology forecasts. And in every forecast, I have said all energy is useful. I don't put this out there to fearmonger, but I just want people to be aware. You have the information. It's like a weather report, right? Like, I don't want you to go outside when it's a thunderstorm without an umbrella. So I was pushing out all this content about, I don't mean to fearmonger, but I just want everybody to be safe. And people were like, you're fearmongering and let's just be real. This is the revolution and shit's going to happen. And it's like, of course, of course. But I'm taking this ethical responsibility of making sure if you are going to protest, if you are going to do direct actions, to be realistic about the kind of state we're living in. We live in a militarized state. This isn't just, I mean, depending on your skin tone, right? Because for the most part, I've seen most of these protests that were happening, the No Kings protests, to be moderately peaceful, except for the ones that I saw that were happening in LA. But dealing with a militarized police has been the reality for many Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. And it's just the fact that now they're exemplifying their force on everybody should tell you a lot about the climate we are living in now. So I just want to say that because I was very naive. Like, when I went to my first protest, I showed up with no protective gear, no safety plan. I just showed up and kind of just like went on my naive way. It wasn't until I met a safety, my friend Kalian, who's a safety advisor for protests specifically, was like, do you have a safety buddy? Do you have an exit strategy? Do you have a mask? Do you have like a protocol in case you get tear gassed, and et cetera, et cetera. So all of this to say was that I felt like I was getting backlash for just reporting on the astrology that I was seeing. But this is just going to be the reality from now on, because 2025, 2026, and beyond, we're in this very heightened time of revolution. And so when we, the people, stand up, it's going to be met with force. So I just want to say that. And that was my own personal experience with the astrology of last week. Thank goodness. I don't really have late degree placements in the fixed signs. But I do have my sun at 0 degrees of Aries. So Saturn and Neptune are conjunct my sun. They are separating from their conjunction, but still. And when Mercury and Jupiter squared my sun, I feel like that's when I was getting a lot of the attacks, not attacks, because ultimately Jupiter is a benefic, right? But I felt like they're not attacks. People are just expressing themselves in the comments section, but I felt like I was just trying to do my duty as an astrologer. And then people were like, also, I was talking to my mom about this morning, is I feel like there's so many people, because that's their trauma response, is to freeze. That's a trauma response. And so a lot of people are still in their delusions. Maybe that's also Neptune, delusions of what is really happening. They want to escape or disassociate. And even myself, like I constantly have to ground and be in this moment and not avoid and not disassociate, because that is my pattern too, my trauma response, and not really deal with the feelings that I'm feeling now. I'm really good at disassociating. I have an Aquarius moon. So I'm really trying to ground every day. I feel like I have to do a clearing. I have to alchemize all of these feelings I'm having into like standing up and continuing to speak out despite everything that's going on with censorship. So somebody asked me, okay, we hear these astrology forecasts, but how does that impact me personally? And what can I do with those energies? So when I tell you the degrees, you really want to look at the degrees, because each sign goes from 0 to 29. And so, depending on the planet and how fast it moves, so Mercury moves very quickly. It's the fastest moving in our solar system, then Venus, then Earth. Obviously, that's us. We are the third rock from the sun, then Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, then Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, Pluto being the slowest. So, depending on the degrees, if you are like the cardinal sign placements from 0 to 3 degrees, you are being impacted by the Jupiter Saturn square, like now. It's not going to really impact you if you are like a 29-degree cardinal sign placement. I mean, it might by sign, by whole sign, but if you have personal placements like I do, I have my sun at 0 degrees, it's impacting me and I feel it. So when you understand that a certain transit is impacting you personally, then you want to break it down into the planet. What is the planet trying to do? In what house, what area of your life, or the people in your life? And the sign could just give you more clues into the nature of what the planet is trying to do into your specific area of life. So you can break it down even further, right? So generally, Jupiter in Cancer is a positive transit because it's exalted. Jupiter wants to expand. It's the greater benefic. It wants to grow. However, it is being impacted by Saturn and Aries, because Saturn and Aries is in an overcoming square. So Saturn is kind of like pushing down whatever Jupiter is just trying to start its thing in, because it's at the beginning of its transit. So Saturn is the planet of maturity, responsibility. It's the like kind of like elder energy, but Saturn is important because it locks in whatever you're trying to grow. It's the material realm, it's the physical reality. In the sign of Aries, it's fallen. So Saturn in Aries is very impulsive, and which is counterintuitive to how Saturn acts, because Saturn takes its time. So it's interesting because one would say that Jupiter is more dignified than Saturn. However, Saturn is in an overcoming square. So in this case, Saturn is kind of squashing whatever Jupiter has just wanted to start to grow in your Cancer whole sign house. Um, and so that Saturn and Jupiter square, how that manifests is, you know, your Cancer whole sign house, you're trying to grow something, something's trying to expand. But then the Aries house is like, wait a minute, have you considered this before you do and think later? Because Aries is impulsive. Before you do that, maybe we should take certain things into consideration. Like, how much energy do we have? Is this what we truly desire, as the nature of Aries, which is ruled by Mars? And so you also want to see like the rulerships. So the ruler of Aries is Mars, and that Mars was in Leo in its last degrees of that transit. And actually, part of the transits this week is that Mars will be moving into Virgo, which is a more careful and considerate placement for Mars to be in. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that, and then just doing a little recap, because I did the forecast a little late last week. I think it went out on June 12th. So I'll pick up back at June 12th, which was the day after the full moon in Sagittarius. The court blocked Trump's National Guard, his desire to call the National Guard into LA. And I find this to be interesting because Gavin Newsom has a 20-degree Mars in Sagittarius, and Trump, this is Trump's full moon. He was born under actually a lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. He's an eclipse person. Trump has his moon at 21 degrees of Sagittarius. So this is another example of how the transits, if they hit your personal placements with another person, it could reveal like what is to kind of manifest. So the fact that Gavin Newsom is the governor of LA, his Mars was actually won over Trump's Sagittarius moon, and his innate desire to put the National Guard in LA. And I looked at LA's chart, which is also interesting because Los Angeles was named in September of 1781. So Los Angeles is going through its Pluto return. Its natal Pluto is at 4 degrees of Aquarius. And then California, the state as a whole, was seeded. I think I mentioned this in the last forecast. Seeded is just a nice word for the US stole it. Seeded is like Mexico gave the US Mexico because they won the war, even though the United States had way more of a bigger military presence. But anyway, semantics. In 1850, when California was ceded to the United States, it was Saturn in Aries. So California is going through its Saturn return. So on June 12th through 13th, so it was June 12th Eastern local time in the United States, and June 13th local time in Israel. Israel striked Iran. And I think this is interesting because they murdered, or they struck a building with Iranian military and scientists. So the military, as exemplified by Mars, and Leo, like head of the leadership, right? And Uranus for which symbolizes like science and innovation. They struck the scientists of Iran as well. So I thought that was such an interesting Mars square Uranus activation. And Israel has its natal Mars at 28 degrees. So this was Israel's exact Mars return. And their sun is at like, I think 23 Taurus. So that Uranus has been going back and forth over Israel's sun over the last couple of years. And it is interesting because Israel's Taurus house is the eighth house of like shared resources and resources that they receive from their allies, essentially, their seventh house, which in this case would be the United States of America. And since 2018, Uranus has been transiting this house of Israel. And like it just seems like every single year, we give them more and more and more and more of our money because it is a colonial outpost. It can only exist because of our giving of our tax dollars to them. And if you didn't know, I feel like I have to say this every single episode. Israeli citizens have free healthcare and, well, okay, subsidized healthcare and education because of our US tax dollars. They also have two passports. Most of the Israeli citizens are from the US and they have dual citizenship. Do you have dual citizenship? For me to get dual citizenship to my parents' homeland, which is my ancestral homeland, I have to live there for like, I think it's like 3 years and I have to pay taxes there. Like there's hoops involved for me to do that. So all of this is to say that their existence is predicated on receiving money, eighth house, from an ally, seventh house, because it's shared resources, right? And the nature of the seventh house gives you a lot of understanding of the nature of your allies. And so Israel being a Libra rising, their seventh house is Aries. So very fitting. And I have to actually look up Iran's chart because there's like two. So I have to look them up, but I think they have a lot of Aries placements. And so they're very much ruled by Mars as well. And then very next day, Iran struck Tel Aviv. And now they're kind of going back and forth, which a lot of geopolitical experts, you don't have to be a geopolitical expert to understand the pattern, right? This is exactly what they used as consent, manufactured consent after 9/11 to go into Iraq, to invade Iraq. So please don't believe in any of this propaganda. I beg of you. But now they're saying that Israel is asking for US assistance. And so because we are fighting Iran through proxy, through Israel. And so a lot of people are like, is this our World War III? You know, a lot of people are starting to get afraid of that. And the last time I believe the US entered World War II, that was during a Uranus and Gemini transit, I believe. I think it was like 1940 something. Hold on, let me check really quick. So the US entered World War II on December 8th, 1941, following the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. And this was actually, which is so interesting, Uranus was at 27 degrees of Taurus, which is conjunct the fixed star Algol. And so the World War II ended in 1945 when Uranus was in Gemini. So yeah. And actually, Israel has Uranus and Gemini because the country is not even as old as a Uranus transit, because Uranus returns happen at every like 83, 84 years. So yeah, it's not even as old enough to have its first Uranus return. So anyway, that was that. It's still ongoing. And on June 14th, the nationwide No Kings protest happened because it was Trump's military style birthday party, birthday parade, very Martian, right? Because Trump has his natal Mars at 29 degrees of Leo. And it's very like military Mars. And unfortunately, on that day, two Minnesota representatives were murdered. They said it was politically motivated, which is also very Mars Uranus. I also think it was interesting that Prince William's friend, I forget his name, he's a billionaire, but he unexpectedly passed away because he swallowed a bee, which I thought was also very Mars square Uranus. Uranus has this like surprise nature, and I would consider bees to be more Gemini, but the fact that like I have to see what bee, because I don't think honeybees do honeybees sting. I feel like honeybees are more like they're more like group workers, right? I feel like that's more of like a Gemini thing versus a bee that stings is more like Mars. Okay, so um these are the observations I had of how these transits were starting to manifest in the collective. And like I always advise, when you want to track these transits in your own personal life, I recommend that you journal. This is my journal. I do this every single day. And I write down the transit. I write down what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, what I'm going through. Um, and all the better if you have like a friend who is into astrology, like me and Stephanie, who we do the monthly astrology forecast together. We're always texting each other like, so what is your Jupiter return like all about? Or how are you handling this Mars square Uranus? And we kind of like exchange ideas with each other. Um, I guess my another one of my Mars square Uranus manifestations is I unexpectedly signed up for an astrology course. Gosh, this is where my Aries comes in. I'm so impulsive. Um, so Mars in Leo is transiting my ninth house, which is also the house of astrology and studying. And Uranus is in my Taurus sixth house, which is the house of like rituals and day-to-day habits. So I think that square was me unexpectedly feeling motivated to, and I used this transit in a conscious way. Like I was like, okay, I want to continue my studies, and I've been waiting to study with Sam Reynolds, who is a brilliant astrologer. And I missed the first class, so I was like, should I sign up for it? It's like a very big financial commitment. Jupiter in Cancer is in my eighth house. And it's squaring to Saturn in my fifth, which is like my hobbies and like what I'm passionate about. And so there was this like tension between like, should I spend all of that money and time in learning something that's like something that I want to learn, but it's not urgent. So it's a 14-week astrology course to further my education. And I'm really excited about it. It's already like, because you really have to know your stuff. It's already starting to like challenge me, which is like, I think something that I was looking for with, having studied astrology for many years now. There's not much that is exciting to me anymore. So studying this is like getting me excited again about the art and craft and divination of astrology. So that was like I guess the manifestation of the Mars Uranus square of like, it is going to be challenging. Reading, doing homework, taking tests. And because it's a small class, like he did call on me the first day, and I was like, and you really have to know your shit. So I'm really excited, but that's how this square manifested for me. And so you can just like I said, all energy is useful if you choose to use it consciously. It doesn't have to be this like apocalyptic thing that happens. And I was telling all of my friends who were going to the protest this weekend, I said, like, just be careful. Like, I think you should definitely go. It's important for us to exercise our First Amendment right of freedom of speech and assembly, but just really be vigilant, you know? After June 16th, which is a Monday, the squares will now be separating. So that pressure is starting to release. And also, it's a waning phase of the moon. The light is becoming less and less and decreasing and decreasing. And we're going towards a new moon in Cancer, which is the loveliest new moon of this year, I have to say. So, yay, y'all made it. So, there's this energy of not only like the pressure dissipating, the light kind of, you know, you're releasing, you're editing, you're removing. I unfollowed 100 people from Instagram. I started, you know, I cut my hair. If you didn't notice, I have it up, so you probably didn't notice. And yeah, just like making space. And this will very much feel like this energy on June 17th when Mars ingresses into the sign of Virgo. Now, Virgo is this archetype of editing and health and wellness, and also paying attention to the detail because it's ruled by Mercury. So, Mars in Virgo is somebody that takes very intentional, small steps towards a goal. Mars in Virgo people can obsess a little bit, I have to say, on perfectionism and wanting to get everything perfect. But perfectionism is colonial, just have to say. But paying attention to the detail is not a bad thing. I think taking small little incremental steps towards a goal is way more achievable, but then having these like huge ideas that you never get to because you feel overwhelmed. And I think a lot of us will just be more focused on our health. Like I mentioned in the new moon in Gemini week, I was like, I'm going to lock in. I'm not going to watch a lot of social media. I'm going to detox. I'm going to write my book. And then that all just like went out the window because of the news stories in the last 2 weeks. So I'm going to try my best during this Mars and Virgo transit. And with this transit, officially comes the end of the Mars retrograde in Leo story. Hallelujah. So, yeah, look at your Virgo whole sign house, and that will give you some clues as to where Mars is trying to take action. Mars is trying to sever and cut away and, like, you know, do its little work in your Virgo house. On June 18th, Jupiter in Cancer will square to Neptune in Aries at 2 degrees. And this will be the third quarter moon in Aries. So this is like when the moon is at the first quarter and the third quarter specifically is after a full moon and before a new moon. So this is the point where there's like a crisis. Like, I really need to let this shit go. I really need to pivot, or I need to make a decision. Because it's a square. So, like, squares are the nature of Mars. It's like a conflict point. And so you want to also look at where your Aries house is, because there's going to be a square between Jupiter and Neptune simultaneously. I talked a lot about Jupiter and Saturn last week because the square to Jupiter and Saturn is happening on June 15th. And Neptune in Aries is this feeling of like, I need to make my dreams come true. I need to make my delusions, my imaginations, like I need to take action steps towards them. So this Jupiter and Cancer square Neptune Aries could just be this pivot point where you just decide, I'm going to do it. You know, these are cardinal sign energies. Cardinal signs take action. And another manifestation of this, though, is just being more confused about what direction to take. And how I use Neptunian energy. I did a whole episode about Neptune Reimagined with Camille Michelle Gray. If I can remember, I'll link it down below. Um, is that sometimes Neptune is meant to have that feeling because the answers have not been privy to you yet. I feel like Neptune is a neurodivergent, non binary, anti capitalist planet because not everything in life is supposed to have a physical, concrete answer. Sometimes you have to tune into your feelings, your emotions, your spirit, and ask the divine for guidance. This energy isn't like, I'm going to ask like a counselor for advice, or I'm going to go to school to understand. It's not like 1 + 1 = 2. It's very spiritual energy, especially with Jupiter in Cancer. So on this day, you could just decide, like, I'm going to make a vision board, or I'm going to take time to imagine what it is, like the kind of life that I want to live. I do this practice with a lot of my clients because oftentimes they get confused about what it is that they want versus what they think they want. So I always say, like, drop the energy from your head and like place your focus on your heart space and your gut and ask yourself, what is it that you truly envision for yourself? That is Neptunian energy. Okay, so then on June 20th, the sun will ingress into the sign of Cancer. Happy solar return to all the Cancers, and this will be the solstice. Now, this is a world point. And anytime a sun or other planet ingresses into a world point, there's some big news happening in the cultural zeitgeist. But the solstices have been celebrated by many ancient cultures and even cultures around the world today. It's like a really big deal. Um, so I would take time to use this world point energy to write down all the things that you want to release, all the things that you're calling in. I still believe in manifestation, by the way, just because I do this work of whatever, like, I don't even have a name for it. This world of ending empire or collective liberation. I still believe in manifestation because manifestation is co creation with the divine. And what better moment in the celestial calendar than to use the energy of the solstice, which is the longest day of the year? And I would take this time to just like really write it all down. I usually like to hang out with heart-minded friends on the solstice and even share these things with other people. So, yes, the solstice. I cannot believe it's already at this point of the year. On June 22nd, Mars in Virgo will sextile Jupiter in Cancer at 2 degrees. Now, I love that as Mars like Mars will transit the sign of Virgo for 6 weeks. And I love that during this 6 weeks, Jupiter will be in a supportive sextile. Sextile is the nature of Venus. It's 60 degrees and it's between two elements that support each other. So water and earth, and air and fire. And I think this is really lovely. Anything that Mars is trying to do in your Virgo whole sign house will be boosted up by an exalted Cancer in your Cancer whole sign house. And those two houses are in a sextile relationship with each other. So in between is Leo, between these two houses. And the same day, the sun in Cancer will square Saturn in Aries at 1 degrees. So Saturn again is this energy of like, hold up. Let's just pause. It's kind of like this energy where, Okay, this is a great example. The flotilla and the march to Gaza. Jupiter was in Cancer, right? When both of those things started, at the flotilla actually ended by the before the time that Jupiter entered Cancer, but Mercury was in Cancer. And so there's this energy of like, we're going to do something. We're bringing humanitarian aid. We're going to lift the siege. We're going to lift the blockade, right? The blockade is Saturn. It's like borders, right? Jupiter trying to square that. It's like, we're going to march to the Rafah border. We're going to sail to Gaza. But that Saturn is there. That Saturn is like, nope. And unfortunately, because Saturn is in an overcoming square, like I said, Saturn has the upper hand. What I'm hopeful for, though, is that Saturn and Neptune together talk about disillusion of boundaries. And so when I used the 1990, I used the 1988 chart for Palestine. That was the Declaration of Independence. There is a Saturn and Neptune conjunction in that chart in Capricorn. And so now the Saturn and Neptune will square that. I think this will become more of a thing next year when both of these planets re-enter Aries. But right now it's kind of like on shaky ground, as you can see, right? So how to apply this to your life? The sun in Cancer is the sun is your life force energy. It's like how you show up and how you express. It's like you, hi, I'm here. And then when it goes against Saturn in Aries, it's like, wait a minute, wait a minute. And that Saturn is now answering to that Mars in Virgo. It's going to be like, did you pay attention to the little details? Did you clean up your mess? Do you have everything organized? And may I just say that that is what we actually need. We need more Virgo energy, not in a neurotic and anxious prone kind of way. Love you, Virgos, but you can be very anxious, but more of the planning ahead, paying attention to the detail, the organizing, the planning version of Virgo. Like we need more of that. So that is your week, your astrological week. Like I said, after June 16th, all of the energies are going to start to release and the pressure will be released. And we're going to get to really enjoy the bountifulness of the Jupiter in Cancer transit. So everybody stay safe. I will see you next week.